of stories. My name is Melinda, and I am here to do my March reading wrap-up. If you follow this channel, you know that this was not a typical reading month for me because of spring break and things like that, but I think I still had a pretty good month, so let's get to the numbers. Also, I did a reading vlog this month, which I combined with a vacation vlog. I'll put a card up there. Because of that, I'm not going to go too in-depth on the books that I read. If you are interested, you can check out that video. So this month I read 12 books, which is good. My goal is always to read at least 12 books a month. So I met that goal. All of them were fiction though. I do try to do at least one nonfiction a month. So I was kind of surprised when I looked at my list of what I'd read that there was no nonfiction on it. So there you go. I do know that there will be at least one work of nonfiction in April because it is People April. And I have decided what I'm going to read for it, which is not something that's on my shelves. I spent time perusing my shelves and then ended up buying a new book. So we'll share that when the time comes. But of those 12 books, 5 of them were mystery books, mystery novels, and 3 were historical fiction, 3 were fantasy, but that's actually pretty high for me with fantasy, and then 1 was a general contemporary fiction novel. And of those 12 books, they were all, 7 of them were in print and 5 were ebooks, and I did not finish a stinking audiobook this month because I didn't go to the gym very much. We're working on that. I went back to the gym for the first time yesterday and I'm feeling it today. So at least I've made some progress on my audiobook. And of those 12 books, 6 or 50% of them were own voices. So that's actually really good. I'm very happy about that. Now, as you might also know, I am on a quest to decrease my owned TBR. So of the 12 books that I read, 3 of them were books that I owned. 8 were from the library and 1 was a borrowed book. That was actually the book from my daughter. That means that I can legally, I'm allowed to buy 2 books in April. I can tell you right now, I'm going to have at least 4. So I'll do another video where I kind of explain, but I have decided that I'm going to carry surpluses and deficits over in my book buying budget from now on. But that's just the way it works. So in April, the goal is 2. I know it's going to be at least 4. Hopefully I can keep it at 4. My average rating was a B+, which is 3.5 stars. Again, if you are new to this channel, I try to rely on grades instead of stars because stars can be interpreted so many different ways. And what is a 3-star to me might not be a 3-star. What I consider 3 stars may not be what someone else considers 3 stars, but I think that grades are a little bit more objective. So let me go through the books that I read. And again, as I said, I'm not going to go to in-depth with them. I had 1 book that I gave a C, and that was The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell. Well, I had a pleasant enough time reading this. I felt it didn't work as a mystery, and it missed a couple qualities that I felt it really needed to be successful, especially successful as a food-based mystery. A big thing that was missing was there was not any kind of food writing. I gave a C+ to Independence by Chitra, Banerjee, Divakaruni. This is historical fiction about 3 Hindu sisters during the partition of Pakistan and India. I felt the book either needed to be longer so it could really delve into these 3 sisters, or it needed to be one end of a trilogy and just focus on one of the sisters instead of what it was. I also kind of got the feeling, and I could be off base, but I kind of got the feeling that it had some anti-Muslim overtones. I had 4 books that I gave a B+ to. The first was The Ghost Fields by Ellie Griffiths, which is in her Ruth Galloway series. I love the Ruth Galloway books. They're all B+ A books for me. This one was a really fun one. My only little complaint about it was sometimes I kind of felt like they got a little bit away from the mystery and more into sort of the general stuff that happens in that mystery series. The next one was The Queen of Dirt Island by Donal Ryan, which was a book of Irish. It's my general / contemporary fiction. It's Irish literature. I ended up finishing it on St. Patrick's Day, which was very appropriate. It was a story about 3 women. There's a mother. We'll start in the middle. There's the mother, the daughter, and then the mother's mother-in-law, so the grandmother. I thought it was a great depiction of these women's lives and how they interacted. I felt like it needed a little bit more plot at times. And then there was The Peril at End House by Agatha Christie, which was actually a pretty fun mystery. I didn't guess it. There was one character that just drove me crazy, but I'm not sure that was unintentional. She might have been designed to drive you crazy. I think probably my biggest problem with this book is Agatha Christie, as we know, is an author who is sometimes stuck in her times, and there was a fair amount of anti-Semitism in this book. And then finally, my next B+ book, my last B+ book, was Dust Child by Nguyen Phan K. Mai. To be honest, this is probably a B+ because it's in comparison to And the Mountains Sing, her previous book, which was an A. This was a very good book. I just don't think it was quite as good as And the Mountains Sing. I liked the fact that she didn't do what you thought she was going to do. It was not the way it's set up, you kind of go into it thinking you know what the storyline's going to be, and it wasn't that. So I really appreciated that. My biggest issue was that the American characters didn't feel very realistic to me. There's a character, you know, he's complaining about the rain, and how can anyone live in this rain in Hanoi? It's either Hanoi or Saigon, I can't remember. I guess those are the same thing now, aren't they? Or no, they're not. I don't know. Whatever. He's in Vietnam and he's complaining about the rain and how it's so hard to be in all this rain. And then you find out he's from Seattle. And I was like, you know, it rains a lot in Seattle, right? It doesn't make any sense. So there were just these little things like that didn't sit right with the American characters. As I said in my video vlog, I kind of feel that's how people who are not American, let's say you're a French reader and you read a book set in France by an American author, like they didn't quite get the French characters right. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I think it was just a thing of the author not being an American. And well, there you go. So those were my B+ books. And then the rest of my books were all A's. So that is very good. That's actually very successful in my mind. The first was Night Wherever We Go by Tracey Ross Peyton, which is a pretty haunting hard read about 6 women enslaved in 1850s Texas. It's a very realistic view of what slavery was actually really like. And it wasn't like Gone with the Wind, sorry. It was a pretty devastating book, but it was well worth it. And then we have VenCo by Cherie Dimaline. This is kind of like practical magic with sort of that like, there's an indigenous slant, but there's also this sort of like, I consider it, if you think of the movie Ms. Marvel, in the scene where she kind of realizes she can like pull the thing off her neck and be her own person. That's kind of the energy that's with this book. It was a lot of fun. It's kind of a cat and mouse game. The characters are a lot of fun. And there's magical elements. I will say that I heard on the Currently Reading podcast that the audio, or at least the audio that they listened to, had some issues. Just if you're interested in this book, to keep that in mind, that it might not be a good book for audio. And then the next one was The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels by Janice Hallett. I started this one as a B+, and I ended up putting it as an A. The reason I originally had it as a B+ is that Janice Hallett's previous 2 novels all had this sort of puzzle, not so much the general puzzle mystery idea, but an actual puzzle at the core, which this one doesn't. And I'm like, oh, well, I missed that. So I'm going to give it a B+. But I just could not stop thinking about this book. And I think this book has a lot more to say than the previous 2 books, so I ended up moving it up to an A. As with Janice Hallett, she has a very distinctive way of writing. If you have never read her before, but you want to give her a try, this is not a bad book to start with. I probably would still recommend starting with her first book, which is The Appeal, though, just so you kind of get an idea of the way she writes. And then there was the book that my daughter had me read this month, which is Amari and the Great Game by B.B. Alston. It's the second in the Supernatural Investigators. Is that what? I don't know. It's the second in the trilogy, which I'm kind of heartbroken that's only a trilogy. Very much a second in the trilogy kind of book, which is fine when it is actually a second in the trilogy kind of book. Very fast read, very action-packed. I really enjoyed it. I really like this series. I like this series more than Harry Potter. There, I said it. I'm sure that my following is going to just drop now, but there you go. But I'm glad that this series exists at a time when my daughter can read it. It's a lot of fun. And then The first of my vacation books was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which I loved far more than I thought I would. It's very much like the house. It gives, I mean, it could be next door to the house in the Cerulean Sea. That's kind of how it felt to me. There were just a couple little things that kind of kept it from being an A+ book for me, but other than that, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that book far more than I thought I would, and I would highly recommend that one. And then finally, my last A book is kind of my most unique book on here, and it's the one that I don't know. I just have a special place for this because I enjoyed it a lot. I really enjoyed it, and it's Feel the Bern by Andrew Shaffer. It's the first in his apparent series of Bernie Sanders mysteries. It is ridiculous. It is supposed to be ridiculous. I'm all for ridiculous when that is the intent. And it is. And he gets Bernie Sanders' character perfectly, and he uses it the way it should, and it's actually a pretty decent mystery. I mean, it's not super twisty, but it's strong enough. Halfway through the book, I didn't know who had done it. I mean, that sort of thing. I'm halfway through and I don't know, that's a good sign. So, you know, if you want to read a little kind of funny, political, but not stressful sort of thing, read Feel the Bern by Andrew Shaffer. So those were my books that I read. Now I'm going to talk about the books that came in that month. I started my new sort of book buying budget thing, and I was allowed to buy up to 5 books this month. And I ended up buying 4, which means I can carry one to April, which is good because I'm already in the hole. So I ended up, as I said, I bought 4, but 6 books came in. There are some books that I don't count in this, and as I go through that, I'll explain why. The first book that I added is one that doesn't count because I'm not counting audiobooks in this, and that is The World Record Book of Racist Stories by Amber Ruffin and Lacey Lamar. I had recently listened to You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey, which was their first book. They're sisters, and loved it. And this is apparently more of the same, but it's not just what happened to Lacey. It's what happened to their friends and family. So I'm looking forward to listening to that one. I do think that's one where I'm going to have to get the print book out of the library to look at the pictures, because that's what happened with the first one. So we'll see. I know there's a whole list at the library, so I'm not sure when I'll get to that one. So I only brought in one ebook, purchased one ebook. I did purchase it, but I used Kobo credit, so it didn't actually cost me any money. However, it does count towards my budget. And that's 9 Moons by Gabriela Weiner. She is a South American writer, and this is a memoir. I was recommended this book by the MyTBR service. I don't know much more about that, but it is now in my collection. And then 4 print books came in, 3 of which do count. The first one is Enchantment, Awakening Wonder in an Anxious Age by Catherine May. This was a pre-order. Catherine May she's probably most famous for writing Wintering. She also wrote The Electricity of Every Little Thing about discovering that she is on the autism spectrum. Both of them are fantastic books. The one thing about Enchantment is I purchased it from bookshop.org, and I noticed that they had a paperback version. I think this is what happened. So I decided to get the paperback version, even though it was more expensive. I don't know why I did that. But it turns out the paperback version is the large print, which is not a bad thing given my eyes. So I think I'm officially old now that I was excited about, you know, getting a large print copy of a book, but there you go. The next one was my book of the month selection for March, which was Lone Women by Victor Laval. That is in my sort of immediate TBR, so I may be getting to that this month. And then the final print book that I purchased that does count towards my budget is The Plover by Brian Doyle. This is the follow-up to Mink River, which I read in February, and that book became my all-time favorite novel. So I'm really looking forward to reading The Plover. I am planning to maybe wait a couple months to read it, just to give me a little more time between Mink River and this, so that I am more apt to judge it on its own merits. And then the final book that came in was one I won through a Goodreads giveaway, so it does not count towards my budget. And that is The Blue is Where God Lives by Sharon Sochil Washington. I don't know much about this. I did look at the reviews on Goodreads, and they seem to be kind of mixed, so that's fair. It's interesting to see where I will fall in this. That is in my immediate TBR, so I should be getting to it, hopefully getting to it rather soon. So those are the books that came in this month. Now, because this is March and we finish up the first quarter, I also wanted to check in on my 2023 goals. I set 3 goals for 2023. They're 3 pretty simple ones. The first one was my Goodreads goal, which is just 144 books this year, which averages out to 12 books a month. As I said, that's what I like to try to read. That is a goal that I set not to push myself, but to keep myself on track. I don't, keep trying to make it bigger and bigger and bigger every year. That's not why I do it. I do it because to me, reading is self-care, so I need to make sure that I make time to do it. 12 books is about how much I can reasonably expect, so I set that for myself as a goal. If I fall behind on it, I know that I need to start kind of giving myself more, putting myself first. Let's just do that, and reevaluating some of my priorities so I can get more reading time in. So at the end of March, I should have read 36 books so far this year. As of March 31st, I had read 38. So I'm 2 ahead. That's very good. My second goal was to decrease my owned print TBR by 20 books net. I did a video. I will put a card up to that too, where I come clean about my TBR issues. I did do a little bit of an unhaul, but it wasn't very big with print, but it did get me back on track. So my goal was to be at the end of March to have 165 unread print books. I'm at 161. So that's good too. I'm ahead of that. And the next one I'm actually pretty proud of. My goal was to read 30% of my reading this year to be owned voices reading. So, authors, marginalized authors writing about their own experiences or reflecting their own experiences in their writing. Last year, I was at exactly 25, so I thought I'm going to up it and make it 30. So far this year, I'm at 40%. And I will tell you that, in March, 50% I was owned voices. So I'm really happy about that. That is something that I do make an effort to do. As I've said, I have 2 book clubs that I'm active in. I have another one that that's kind of there that I have trouble going to. For various reasons, mostly to do with my eyes. And then I do some read-alongs and such, but the 2 book clubs that I'm active in, one is about marginalized authors. So a lot of those books come through that. And the other one, it's called Diverse Voices, but basically just means reading things from different parts of the world or reflect different parts of the world. So it's not always marginalized authors, but most of the time it is. So that helps a lot with that goal. And then I wanted to give you a rundown finally of my current owned TBR. Before I get into this, I am going to tell you that it's going to look much different next month because I started last month, but I didn't get very far, but I'm trying to finish by this month doing sort of an unhaul of ebooks, which I understand you don't actually unhaul ebooks, but getting them off my TBR. So I just have on my TBR what I actually intend to read. So I do expect those numbers to go down quite a bit. But as of right now, I have, 872 owned books that I haven't read. 71 of those are audiobooks, which means 801 is what I'm concerned with right now. Of those, 161, as I said, are print, and 639 as of March 31st were ebook. And that's 375 on Kobo and 264 on Kindle. My Kobo books, I was much more discerning when I got them. On the Kindle, I have a lot of stuff there. I don't know why I have it. And that's why I'm going through my Kindle books and getting rid of things that I don't actually intend to read. So the changes that you will see next month when I give a rundown on my TBR, it'll come in the Kindle category. So there's my March. As for April, I don't really have any goals except People April, which is reading 1 book. They do have prompts for it. This year I'm not doing that. I probably will in future years. Usually I'm not a huge read-along person. Like booktube read-alongs. There's so many of them, and I want to have as much choice as I can in my reading. So I don't usually do those, but People April sounded like something that I would do. So I am doing that one. I will do Sue's Big Books of Summer because I've done that before. And that, again, that's just big books. I already know. I'm only going to commit to 2 big books. I already have them, but I always read more than that. And then I'll do Nonfiction November. March was middle grade March. I always read a middle grade book, and mystery March, which I always read mysteries. So doing those as read-alongs didn't make that much sense to me. So I'm only going to do People April. As I said, I spent a lot of time looking at my shelves, seeing what I owned that I could read for People April, and then I bought a new book, which I will talk to you about when it comes. One other thing I wanted to touch base about, and I don't know if this really concerns anyone who's watching this video on YouTube, because it's not going to mean any changes with this BookTube channel. But as I've said, I do have a blog. I started as a book blogger, but lately blogging has been hard. It's just, that's not where my interest is, and I just don't know what to do with it. To the point where I was just doing a weekly update on Sundays and then joining a blog hop, but even that got hard because I didn't have time to follow all the other blogs. So what I have decided to do is I'm going to take kind of a rest on my blog until July 1st. And at that point, I'm going to decide what to do. Until then, and this might be what I continue after that then, but until then, I am just going to post my videos, my YouTube videos on the blog. I'm not going to worry about anything else. The other place this will probably show up is in my book, Goodreads, and, you know, Storygraph reviews are probably not going to be kind of as composed. Not that they were that composed. They were always very stream of consciousness. But instead of being a couple paragraphs, they might be a couple sentences, because to me, I'd much rather talk to you about what I thought of books and then sit down and try to compose something at this point. So that's just a change I'm making on my end. If any of this becomes, you know, any of this bookish social media that I do becomes a burden, then it needs to be something that I don't do. BookTube is not a burden to me. Instagram is not a burden to me, but the blog was starting to get to be a burden to me. And the writing the reviews at that level on Goodreads was also starting to be a burden. So I'm stepping back from those things for a while. Who knows? I may come back to it with a vengeance, or I may say, you know what, this is something that I can drop, but we'll see. So I'm going to wrap this up now. I am done rambling. I will be back on Sunday with my weekly reading updates. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll have some more videos next week. We'll see. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. And if you made it through this video and you enjoyed it, give me a like, give me a subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what your favorite book was in March, tell me what your least favorite book was in March, whatever, leave me a kitty cat emoji, whatever you want to do. And I will see you all in the next video. Thank you.